Alright, so for this tutorial we're going to be expanding our VR game, and we're going to actually start learning how to teleport on the floor. So we have to look at certain squares or blocks that we can teleport to. We're going to learn how to interact with objects. In this instance, I'm going to be having a cube rotating. When we look at it, it rotates the other direction, and it, vice versa, keeps going. And also creating like a computer screen. So I've got like a blank plane. When we look at it for a certain amount of time, the screen turns on. And then if we look back at it, it will turn off. So if we have a look at our final game, which will look something similar to this, we can have a look at it, and this will be what we will be doing. These are our teleport panels, so we can teleport to those as if we were in VR. There's our cube. We can look at that for a bit. It'll rotate the other direction if I keep doing that. If I go to this teleport screen, come to this screen, turn it on, and it'll turn on a computer screen, and I can turn it off. Alright, so that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, and let's get into it. So firstly, what we need to do, we need to close this. Alright, firstly what we're going to do, we're going to create our load ball, so what that red circle is when our game is loading. Now what I did, I just did it as simple as possible. I went into Paint 3D. There's no reason why you can't do it in like Illustrator or things like that, but I just found it, I just went in here really quickly. Just went in Paint 3D, changed the canvas to transparent, and then changed the width and height to 36 pixels by 36. Now, once again, there's no reason why you can't do this in Illustrator. So if you prefer to go into Illustrator, go for it. Once I did that, I just chose a 3D shape, and I chose the sphere. And I just went for chose the red, went from the top left downwards to fill the box as best as I possibly could. Went menu, save as, image, and then I exported as a PNG, so I can save that now. And I'm going to call that the load ball. I'm going to update my ball. Alright, and that's just literally the load ball that we'll have on our pointer. Now you don't have to have this, but with the scripting that I have, you do need to have it. But if you had other ways of scripting, you wouldn't actually have to have this. So I'm not going to save that. So now I have that load ball ready to go. Now for your screen capture, all I did was went into Google Chrome. You can just do your desktop if you want. You can just go into snipping tool and just take a screenshot of your background by pressing new, clicking and dragging the whole screen. You'll have a screenshot and just pressing save, and then you can just go screen, or whatever you want to call it. So then you have a background that you can have. I've got Google Chrome. I'll use this screen one that I just made. So that's snipping tool, and that's 3D Paint. Can use Illustrator for that as well. Now what you also need for this tutorial, you need to make sure you have your Google VR for Unity. Without that, you won't be able to use half the things that I'm going to be making. So make sure that you have Google VR for Unity. Alright, now let's open up Unity and let's start a new project. Here we go. Alright. So it should open up Unity Hub, as that's controlling Unity nowadays. What you need to do is press New. I'm going to call it Interact/Teleport. It's going to be a 3D world. So Interact/Teleport. We can go VR, and I'm just going to create that. Project name is invalid. It's probably because it's got a slash. Interact Teleport VR. So create that. So we have a blank Unity file. Now what we're going to do straight away off the bat, we're going to import our Google VR and our two images that we just made. So the load ball and also the screen. Like I said, we're going to import. So what we're going to do is assets, import package for the Google VR. So we can just go import package. Desktop is where I put it, and there's that package. It will load that in. These have got some prefabs that we need to use. Not the scenes necessarily, but it does have prefabs that we need. It has potentially some scripts and environments and things that we actually need to use for our VR today. So we're going to just go import, and that should come down in your assets. And it should be right there. It should say Google VR. Perfect. Now we're going to add our two image assets. What we can do is just go into our file explorer, and I have them both here, so I can just click and hold Control and click and drag that into our assets folder, and that will drop that straight in. All right, now we're ready to actually start our project. So what we're going to do first is that we're going to actually rearrange this, our hierarchy. So firstly, what we're going to do, we're going to have our directional light. We're going to click and drag that and make that the top. All right. Now, before we move any further, we should probably save. So we're just going to press Control S. That will save the sample scene. However, I want to rename it so I know what exactly the scene is. So we're going to save as, files save as, save it into our scenes folder, which should automatically generate. And we're just going to go VR tools. All right. So that should be in our scenes now. We should have VR tools. Okay, so we're going to have our directional light at our top. We're going to add a thing called a GVR event system. All right, so what we're going to do, once you've imported the Google VR, you can find this. So you need to just go to this search bar, just type in GVR event system, and it should be this blue one right here. What you're going to do is click and drag that and put that right underneath your directional light, not inside of it. So underneath it. Then we also need another one. So it's called a GVR editor, which should be a blue one as well. Editor emulator. GVR editor emulator. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it underneath our GVR event system. Cool. Now our camera is our player. So we don't want our camera to be a main object. We're going to add an empty object that's going to hold our camera. So we're going to create empty object. We're going to rename this to be player. So you can right click, rename to player. And we're going to put our main camera inside of that by clicking and dragging it, and make sure it goes into our player, and we should have this drop down now for our camera and player. Now our camera actually needs a component, but firstly, before we do that, we need to make sure our positioning is in the center of our scene. So let's change our positioning for our camera to 0, 0, 0 instead of whatever numbers it pops up, and also make sure our player is also in 0, 0, 0. Let's just check those even though you think they might be there. Then what we need to do is on our main camera is add a component. So we click on our main camera, come down to add component, and we're going to add a thing called GVR pointer physics raycaster. So what this will do is be our white little pointer on our screen, so we can choose objects to interact with. It will be our main interactor. So there's our interaction. Okay, that's all we needed to do for our camera. Now what we're going to do, we need to come back to our ball object that we would have imported in. And we're going to click on that, and we're going to play with this for a second. So what we need to do is change this to be a different type of texture. As it starts, it comes as a default. We need to change it to be a UI object, because we're using it as a UI for our pointer. So we're going to change the default to a sprite, 2D and UI. All right. Now, what we need to do is add a floor to our object. Press apply. Make sure you press apply for that, and it should come here now as an asset. It should have a little drop down. All right, now what we need to do is add a floor, so we have somewhere to stand or make it look like we're standing. So what we're going to do is right click, add a 3D object, and we're going to add a plane. We just want a flat plane. It will come up as gray. I'm just going to add it to be a bit bigger than what it was at the start, just so we have a bit more room to work with. All right. Then what we're going to do, we're going to start actually creating our teleporters. But first we're just going to rename this to floor. So we know that's our floor. Now we're going to create our teleporters. So first we're going to add a cube. So 3D object cube. We're going to change its Y to in scale to 0.1. So change its cube to its scale of 0.1. Now what this will do is create a flat object for us to use. Now I'm just going to move it away by clicking our move tool and just clicking on these arrows and moving it away from my screen. Now what I'm also going to do is come back to our player so we're not in the ground. If you look at your game aspect right now, you see that we're inside the ground. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on that player and change the Y axis, because that's our up and down, that's our vertical. And we're going to change it to 2, which really means 2 meters. So he's about 2 meters tall, which is about a decent height. All right, now we've got our platform in front of us, which looks fantastic. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to add some components. So when we click on our cube, which we're going to call now a teleport. So we know it's our teleport. We're going to click on it, come down to add component. And we're going to add a thing called event trigger. So event trigger. What this will do is when we start getting more scripts, or when we start adding a script in our game, we can tell the player that this will be a certain event that will happen. And when we look at it for a certain amount of period, this will happen, that will happen. And I'll get to that a little bit later. And we're also going to add a thing called a tag. And we're going to do a lot of these tags with all our components, just because that's how the scripting works. And a tag, if we click on our teleport, is right at the top and it says tag and it should say untagged. But we're going to create a new tag. So we're going to click on that and go add tag. Well, it should come up with a window like this. And we're going to add something to the list. And we're going to call it teleport. And then we're going to save. We're going to come back to our teleport object. It still says untagged. And we're going to change that to be teleport. Okay, so now that object should be has a tag of a teleport. Okay. Now what we're going to do is going to add some colors to our game, because our game at the moment is very grey and very dull. So what we're going to do, we're going to come into our assets, right click, create folder. And we're going to call it materials. Now in this folder, we're going to double click. We're going to right click, go create material. And we're just going to say this one could be our teleport material. And then we're also going to right click, create another material, and we'll call this our floor material. So we know what our materials are. For our teleport, we're going to click on it, and we're going to just come up to here where it says albedo and change our color by clicking in that box. And I'm going to choose a nice red, just to make it really stand out. Or actually, I'm going to make it yellow. Or orangey. Let's go orange. All right. Then with our floor, I'm going to make it green, as if it was like grass for our materials. So now you'll see our materials have 2 different colors. So click on the material and change your color by clicking in this area here and changing the slider. Once you have your colors, all you need to do now is say for the floor, click and drag onto the floor. And same with the teleport, click and drag onto the square. So now you should have a green floor and an orange platform, or whatever colors you used. So now we're going to create a UI. So this UI is going to be where our load ball is going to be. All right. So what we're going to do is right click in our hierarchy. We're going to go UI and we're going to click image. Firstly, we're going to remove some stuff, which is on our canvas. So if you click on canvas, initially you'll click on image and you won't see what we need. If you click on canvas, we're going to remove our graphics raycaster, because we actually don't need that. So if you click these 3 dots and press remove component, it will just delete it. Then we're going to change our render mode from being an overlay to being a camera. Then on our image, we're going to come to this up here, and we're going to reset all these values. Now to do that, without changing all the numbers to 0 or whatever it is, we can just click these 3 dots and press reset. Then the final thing that we need to do is put a source image in. So this is why we're still on the image one. We need to put a source image. At the moment it's got nothing. So we're going to load our ball. And our ball should have popped up in our screen. Then what we need to do is change the image type from being simple to filled. Now if I play with this fill amount, you'll notice that the ball looks like a loading screen. Okay? And our UI pointer is ready to go before we have any scripts. And now we're actually going to start making some scripts. So we have our ball ready, we have our platform ready, we have our floor ready. We need to have a script to tell everything what to do. So firstly, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it scripts. This is just good housekeeping to make sure everything is in a similar spot so you know where it is. So we're going to go into scripts. We're going to right click, create C# script. We're going to name this VR Gaze. Capital V, capital R, capital G, lowercase a, z, e. Make sure there's no space. Make sure it's exactly how mine is. Then we're going to double click on that. And we're going to do some typing to write some code. So for the first thing that we're doing, we are creating a UI. And now in our systems at the moment, we don't have our UI system. So we're going to add a system in line 4. So you come to line 3 at the end of it, press enter. We're going to go using Unity engine.ui to say that we're using a UI. Good. Now we're going to get rid of this text here on line 8. And we're going to add a thing called a public image gaze. So what this will be is our image for our loading ball. So all our loading is based off that image. So public image gaze semicolon. I'm just going to zoom in so you can have an easier look at this. Then what you're going to do, you're going to add another public float for how long your image gaze is going to be. For how long are we going to take to be on that object before something happens. And I'm going to choose 1 second. You can change this to be faster with 0.5, or you can make this slower with like 3 or 4, etc. It's up to your personal preference. But I'm going to choose 1. Then you're going to add a bool, which is a true or false, of our GVR status. So what is the status of our GVR? Which is all those event systems and those editor emulators that we added earlier and our pointer. Then we're going to click a float. Now this is our timer. So this is our GVR timer. This is linked with our total time above. Then we're going to go to our update. We're going to get rid of this line. We're going to go to our update. We're going to go if the GVR status, so we're talking about the GVR status right now, what's going to happen with our GVR status? So if the GVR status, the GVR timer plus equals time dot, make sure it doesn't change on you like that, time dot, it does it every time for me, time dot delta time. So that's to increase performance. GVR timer plus equals time delta time. Then we have our image gaze dot fill amount, so how much it's filled, like that little timer that I just showed you, equals to the GVR timer divided by the total time. So that's just telling you what's the GVR status. So if the GVR status is this, well, that's the filling amount of the timer, etc. All right, now we're going to add 2 public voids. Firstly, we're going to tell us what GVR on is, and then we're going to tell us what GVR off is. So first we're going to go public void GVR on, all capitals except for the N, open and close brackets, and then a curly bracket. GVR status equals true. So when our GVR is on, our GVR status is true, which means it's on. Then we're going to do a public void. We're going to do GVR off, lowercase f's, open bracket, close bracket, curly bracket. Our GVR status is, I bet you can guess it, false. Now there's also some other stuff that we need to fill in, because when the GVR is off, when it's not actually pointing at something, we want other things to stop as well, otherwise the timer will just keep going. So we're going to stop the timer by going GVR timer will also be at 0. So it's going to stop. Then also our image gaze fill amount is also going to be off, so at 0. So that's to make sure that our timer doesn't keep going, and that means all our objects with a timer doesn't keep flicking on and off. And it also means our display of our load ball isn't continuously loading or showing on our screen, so we can have a clear view of what we want to see, and it's just better aesthetics. So once you finish that, press Ctrl S and save it. Now we need to add this to our player. But first we're just going to check our console to make sure there's no errors. Press clear, and it should say 0 and 0. If not, you've typed either something wrong, you've spelt it wrong, go back to the script, check it out. Make sure you have all the same spellings and the same capitals as me. Now our VR gaze is going to be put on our player. So we're going to click and drag the VR gaze onto the player. And you should see now a component here. Then you should see two little placeholders, one for the image and one for the timer that I said that we can do slower or faster. So the image gaze, our non-image at the moment has no image, but this is going to be this ball here. So what we're going to do is click and drag this image here in our hierarchy into the image gaze. Then on our teleport, we're going to start adding some events. So at the moment we have our VR gaze. If we press play on our game, we should be able to, if you press down Alt, you should be able to move around, looking around 360. Now our ball's still there at the moment, but we'll fix that a little bit later. We haven't put all our events in, we haven't put all our scripts in. But at the moment we've got our VR world, we've got the ball ready to go. We hold down Alt, we can scroll around. Now let's stop pressing play. If you continue in play, all your edits won't be saved. So now we're going to go back to our teleport, and we're going to play with our event trigger now. So our event trigger now can be actually set up and ready to go. So we're going to add an event type, and we're going to go pointer enter. And then we're also going to add a new event type, pointer exit. So when our GVR is on and GVR is off. So for our pointer enter, we're going to press the plus sign. We're in this little section here, we're going to click and drag our player. And we're going to choose its function. Its function is going to be a VR gaze, which is the one we made. And it's going to be GVR on. Then we're going to do the same thing for our pointer exit. So drag our player in. But this time it's going to be GVR off. Alright, so now that our event trigger is working, we have our objects working. So it should be able to still have the game on. Hopefully there's no errors. Should be able to still look. If the ball wasn't there, it should be triggering that. But we still haven't fixed that yet. But now our game's still working. It means we have no errors in our console. Now we need to add a script for our teleport. So our teleport can actually have some ability to work. Alright, so we're going to go into our scripts folder again. Make sure you're in Assets, Scripts. Don't be in the Google VR, because there is a script folder in there. Make sure you're in your scripts. I'm going to right click, create, C# script. And this time we're going to call it our teleport, because we're working with our teleport. And we're going to double click that and open that in Visual Studio. Now this is a really simple script. We're not going to use a lot. We're going to actually get rid of all the void updates and starts. Press tab. Then what we're going to do, we're going to call our game object, which is we're going to go public game object. So we're going to talk about our player. What are we going to do to our player with this object? So we're having these interact with each other. So we're going to grab our game object, our player, and what's going to happen? We're going to have a public void. So this is going to link to our VR gaze. So our public void, our teleport player, is going to be doing something with our game object player. So what we're going to do, we're going to transform our player. So player transform dot position. So we're changing its position to its new vector 3 because we're working in 3D. So we're going to transform the position of X. We're going to transform dot position dot Y plus 1.5 F. So that's just going to make sure that our Y position is just up 1.5 off the ground, so we're not stuck into the ground. You could probably change that to 2 if you want to keep it at the same height as what your player is already at. So then we're going to press comma, and then we're also going to change our transform dot position to Z. And we're going to put a semicolon. So all that means is that our player is going to transform its new position to the position of whatever that object is, plus 2 on the Y, so then we stay off the ground a little bit. Once you've done that, press Control S. Now we're actually going to drag that into our teleport. Firstly, we're going to check our console once it loads. Make sure that there's no errors by pressing clear. And there's no errors. Those errors would have popped up during those scripts, so if you press clear, it will give you an updated version. So we're going to click and drag that teleport into our teleport. And now we should have a component right down the bottom called teleport script. And we should see a thing that says player, none, game object. So now we need to drag the player into this game object. So click and drag player into the game object. Good. So now what we need to do is fix up our gaze so that we don't have this ball anymore. So we don't have that, and our transforming our positions can work as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to open up our VR gaze scripting again, and we're going to add a couple of things. So firstly, under our float GVR timer, we're going to add a public integer, so public int, distance of ray, so ray is our field of view, is going to be 10. Now we can change this a bit later, and I'll explain why we will change this a bit later. And then we're going to go private, our ray cast, again, that's where we're looking. When we hit, we're going to have underscore hit. So this is just referencing in the code what underscore hit means, underscore hit, which is our ray cast. So when our casting of our rays hit something. So now we're going to come under our void update and add a couple of things. We're going to go ray. I love when saying that. Ray equals camera dot main dot viewport. Point to ray. We're going to do a new, new vector 3, which is going to be 0.5 f, 0.5 f, 0 f. And then we're going to close it off with a semicolon, which will space it out for you. Then under that, we're going to do an if statement. So if the physics raycast ray out underscore space underscore hit distance of ray. That's enough there. So this if statement, so if these things happen, which I'm just going to space out a little bit. Just having an issue here. Don't know why. Oh, wrong thing. I've put these in the wrong spot. So we're going to copy these to in our void update, sorry, underneath our if statement. So this is in our void update. Very sorry. So we're going to do that. Now it will work properly. Well, it should, but I'll fix those semicolons in a minute. So, no, semicolons, our curly brackets. Always got to fix our curly brackets. So if we go here, our if statement, if the image gaze dot fill amount, we're talking about our teleport now. So we're going to go if our fill amount is equal to 1 and the hit dot transform dot compare tag. Remember how we tagged our teleport with the word teleport? We're going to type that in again. Teleport. This is what's going to happen. We're going to have that raycast hit, transform the game object to get the component to teleport. So this is referencing the script now to do components teleport. We're grabbing the component first, and then we're going to tell it to do what the teleport player. So remember how we typed in our teleport before, how we write teleport player. So now this is referencing that. So now what this all means is saying if the image fill amount goes to 1, we're going to make sure that it has this tag, because that means we're going to do this thing. So when it has that tag, we're going to transform the game object to whatever the component teleport. So the component's called teleport, and we're going to go to wherever it tells us in this part of the script, which is right here in this part of this script. It's just referencing each other. All right, so now I'm just going to quickly fix these curly brackets to make sure everyone has a friend in the right spots. He doesn't, for some reason. That's better. So make sure they have these lines connecting to each other, otherwise it will not work. Cool. So if I save that, I have an error here. That should be another bracket here. Save it. All right. So that should be perfectly fine. Have a look at yours. Make sure it's the same as mine. You can pause at certain points. All right. So if we minimize that, we come back into our game. As it loads, check our console, clear it, so there's no issues there. And then we should be able to press play. And we should be able to teleport to this spot, which I just did. However, we're having an issue with our ball. It hasn't disappeared yet, so let's have a look at what that issue is. Okay, so our issue that I just looked up is that we have forgotten one step in our main camera. Now, we forgot to add one little thing from the Google VR. We're going to add a GVR reticle pointer. So we're going to click and drag that and put that under our main camera. So that should be a pointer now. So if I press play, should hopefully just be a dot, but this seems to be the whole thing. If I press and hold down that, I should teleport, and now it should just be that white dot. If you don't want that red to be there the whole time, you can just come back to the canvas, get image, and change the fill amount to be 0. I'm going to come back and change the teleport speed, because it's quite slow, to total time 1. And I'm going to change this distance array. Now what this distance array is how far our camera looks. So I'm going to make it 200 meters-ish, so that we can see further on our on our plane. So now if I test this out, press play, hold down Alt to look, you should have a white dot on our screen, hold over that, load, and teleport to that. Works perfectly. So now we're just going to add some teleports to our game. So I'm just going to right click, create empty, and I'm just going to call it teleports, and I'm just going to house all our teleports in here. It does nothing, it's just going to house everything, so teleports. So we're going to put that in there. I'm going to copy and paste and put that in there as well. I'm going to put, I'm going to rename that, make sure they're all the same name. We're going to put 4 teleports into the 4 corners of, or around our plane. So I'm just going to move that by clicking on it and using the move tool to put it in a different spot. I might use more than 4. I don't know. Yeah, probably will actually. So I'll just copy and paste. Click and drag. I might put one here so we can get to as multiple spots of our world. And then what I want you to do is we're just going to actually test it to make sure that our world can be used properly with our teleports. So I'm going to press play. Hold down Alt to have a look around. Cool, I see all the squares, that's good. Let's have a hold down. Good, that teleports. Check this, teleports, good. And we can just move around the screen to make sure that it teleports. If I can go here, good. I can maybe go further over here, make sure the white dot's all on it. Alright, so there's an issue there. That just took a little bit longer than usual. But otherwise, our teleports work perfectly. We can continuously teleport around the screen. So this will be the basis of your VRs. So you don't have to have a walking character. You can just look at the floor and point to a certain thing and walk to it. It makes it a hell of a lot easier. Just a bit more time consuming to make. Alright, now what we're going to do, we're going to add some other stuff to it. So we're going to add, we've done our teleports. Now it's time to make a rotating cube. Now we've done all the hard work, we've all set it all up. Now we're just got to add some stuff and it makes it a hell of a lot easier. So firstly in our hierarchy, we're going to, go right click, create 3D object, cube. And we're going to name this, we're just going to leave it cube because that's what it's going to be. We're going to put this right in the middle or middle-ish of our scene. So I'm just going to move it. I'll move it to about here. Alright, so it's above us right now, but when we move around it should be fine. Now we're going to add a new script. So go scripts, right click create C# script. And we're going to call it rotate cube. So that's going to be our script name. We're going to double click that and open it up in Visual Studios. And we're just going to make another simple script, a very simple one. We're not going to spend hours doing it. And all we're going to do is firstly, we're going to tell it to have some force to tell it how to rotate. So we're going to go public float spin force. We're going to leave our start, and then we're going to change our update. Inside of our update, we're going to go transform dot rotate. I'm going to change it to 0, spin force, and then we're going to make it time dot delta time, and then finally 0 again. Then close it off. And then we're going to add, like what we did with our teleport, a public void. So public void, and we're going to go change spin. So we change it to the other way. And what that's going to be is spin force. So spin force is going to equal minus spin force. So it's literally just going to spin the opposite way. So from going positives, it's going to go to minus and then vice versa. And it just continuously rotate to each other. I should type that, save it, Control S. And then we're also going to put that onto our cube now. So we shouldn't have any errors if you go console, clear. Maybe have one. Transform does not contain a, so I spelled something wrong. So I spelled rotate wrong. Make sure you spell it right. Now if I clear my console, I should have no errors. Good. Then we're going to put that rotate cube on our cube. And then we're going to fix our VR gaze. Now it's very simple. We've already done the hard work, so we're just going to click and drag and copy this. Then we're going to put and paste that down here. Put a space in between. Now we just need to change a couple of things. So firstly, we're going to change this tag to be rotate cube. And we're going to have to put a tag on our cube as well. We're going to put end GVR status. So this is determined by the GVR status. All right. So we're going to hit transform game object component. We're going to change the teleport to be rotate cube. And we're going to change the spin because that's our public void. And our GVR status is going to be false. If we press save, come back to here. We need to do a couple more things before this starts working. So we're going to clear this, make sure it's empty. Get cube. We're going to add that tag I was talking about. So we're going to add a tag. We're going to add it. Go rotate cube. Spelled exactly the same as how we had it in our code. Change our tag to be rotate cube. And then also we're going to make sure our spin force is, say, let's go 10 so it spins quick enough in our script. And then we need to do one more thing, is add event triggers. Event triggers. So add component event trigger. And then we're going to add a new pointer enter, add a new pointer exit. We're going to press a plus sign, click and drag our player, function, VR gaze, on. Plus sign, player, function, VR gaze, off. And now if we press the game, we should have our rotating cube above us. You see the shadow there. We should be able to teleport to, say, here. Look up, click on that, and change the rotation. Now if I wanted to see that work a little bit faster, so at the moment it's in spin force, let's change that to 100, make it actually spin. So now if I hover over it, you'll see it go positive and then negative. So we have our cube. We're interacting with our cube. All right, I'm just going to change the spin for permanently. Remember, when you change in play mode, it doesn't save it. Save it. All right, now we're going to do one more thing. We're going to add a screen. So this is going to be our computer screen. Say if you make a computer screen in your VR simulation, you can have this and hover over it and then pop something up. So what we're going to do, we're going to right click, create object, create 3D object cube. We're going to say move it to here. I'll move it to the end over here. What I'm going to do is flatten it. So I'm going to scale the x-axis to be 0.1. And I'm going to make the rest of it bigger by pressing the scale tool. Instead of typing in numbers, I'm going to just make it bigger. And make sure that it's not under the ground. Cool. As if it's like a TV screen. Just grab the move tool so I can move my screen. So there you go. I have my black screen at the moment. So I resized it. Now I'm going to add a script. But first I'm just going to rename it to screen. So I know it's the computer screen. Now I'm going to go create C# script computer screen. Now don't use screen because it will reference a GR script and it'll cause a bunch of errors. So computer screen is the best way to avoid that. So open that up, you have a new script. Now what we're going to do is go public game object. This time we're going to be affecting our screen. Now we're going to be working with materials this time. So we're going to go public material. So it's to know that we're working with a material, and we're going to call it on. And we're going to have another public material. We're going to call it off. So what does it look like when it's on? What does it look like when it's off? Now we can actually get rid of this void update and start. we're going to go public void and screen on. So what does screen on look like? So screen on is going to look like, so we're going to grab the screen, we're going to get the component of the render, we're going to change the renderer, and this is going to be whatever that material is, which is material on. Then we're going to do the same thing again, but the opposite. So public void screen off. We're going to copy this and change one word. So copy that and change that to off. So now whatever void, when we get void screen on, it's going to do this. When it's get screen off, we're going to get that. Okay, we're going to save that. Save that, go into our game, make sure our console is still at 0. Clear that, still at 0, good. We're going to click and drag our computer screen into our screen. So now we have a script on here, should be here, and you should have 3 open areas. Now before we play with the materials, we're just going to grab some VR, fix our VR gaze again. So double click on that. We're going to need a new if statement, but we're going to get if and else statement. So copy this. It's very similar to this script, so copy this one instead of this one. So we're going to double enter, press copy paste. We're going to give it a new name. So we're going to rename this to screen. And we're going to get rid of this GVR status. And we're going to change a couple of things in here. So because we're working with the computer screen, we're going to choose our computer screen. So this is our script, our computer screen script. And we're going to change this one, specifically is going to be screen on. Then we're going to have an else statement. So else, what's going to happen is that the hit, we can just copy and paste this, the hit is going to be screen off. Good, and then we could save that. Now our scripts are ready to go. We need to fix our component to make sure that it's working with the right stuff on it. So I'm going to clear that. We're going to go to our screen. And we're going to add a couple of things. So we need to add these materials, but we won't do that first. We'll go add component. We're going to add event trigger. And we're going to do the exact same as last time. So pointer enter, pointer exit, plus sign, drag our player, have our function, VR gaze, on, have our function, VR gaze, off. So our event triggers are ready to go. Now we need to add a tag. Now remember we named it screen, so let's add tag screen. Save, come back to screen, change the untag to screen. Alright, once you've done that, we need to add our materials. And this is the last step of our Unity. So what we're going to do, we're going to come back to our assets. So firstly, we need to have our screen, which is the game object. So we're going to click and drag this game object, which is itself, and put it in there. Now when the screen's on, we want to have the desktop screen. So at the moment, I can't drag this in. And that's because I've made it an image, not a material. So I'm going to click on that, change the default. Sorry, I'm actually going to go and click and drag this into our object. Because what that will do is automatically make it a material for me, so I don't have to worry about it. Hopefully it hasn't done it on the other side, which I think it has. It has so. So I'm just going to rotate this object to go the other way. So click and rotate. I'll go a big 180. Oh, it's still there. Hopefully that's got it on both sides. And it doesn't. fine, I'll just move the object. To have that material on it. Good. Now we need to add our other materials, so our off material and our on material. So we can just go right click, create. I'm going to create a material, and now I'm going to call this screen off, so I know that's our off screen, and I can rename this to be screen on. So our screen off, I'm just going to have it as, say, black, so I know it's off. So in our screen, we've got our on, which is going to be this one. So click and drag and put that material in. And we're going to screen off, click and drag and put that material in. So it should say screen on, screen off if you named it the same as my materials. Now if we press play, we should have all our components working. So we've got our cube moving in the sky there. That should be able to rotate into a different direction. Good. We should have our teleports. Good. Now our screen's already on, but if I hover over it, it turns it off. Then if I hover over it again, it turns on, and move on, it turns off.